This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm joined by Eddie Hearn out here in the bustling city of Fresno. Eddie, how are you doing?
I said to you, how have you got out here? And then I realised you come from Vegas, so it's not too far. But yeah, it's a unique place. I mean, it's a great fighting city. It's also quite in the middle of nowhere. I mean, flew in last night, ended up driving 5 hours to get here, and great stadium though, right? I mean, amazing weather, great setup. Expecting around 6,000–7,000 here on Saturday. Going to be a great atmosphere and ready for fight night in the USA.
Eddie Hearn Day announced today as well.
Unbelievable. I didn't know anything about that, and when they said, you know, obviously it was the mayor of Fresno, so I'm thinking, I don't know, is it like sort of honour of the city or something? And when they said today, October the 14th, will be Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing Day in Fresno, forever. Actually, pretty cool, right? I mean,
does that mean that you've got? You've got to return every year now?
On October the 14th. Yeah. But I don't know. It's a great honour, and thank you to everybody here. It is nice to come somewhere where, obviously, it's not a New York, it's not a Los Angeles, it's not a Vegas. So when something like this comes to Fresno, it is a massive moment for them. So, and it's nice to see, you know, them get behind the event, and looking forward to a great show on Saturday.
Let's get into the show. Mikey Garcia returns against Sandor Martin. I'm sure it wasn't maybe the fight that everybody had wanted, but still, what do you expect from Sandor?
I think a good fight. I mean, look, got into it with a few people. I think Mike Coppinger was one of them. He's like, who's Sandor Martin? Like, Sandor Martin's a good fighter. I'm not saying Sandor Martin's a 4-division champion, but he's European champion. He's top 15 in the governing bodies. Like, when you're looking for a fight to come back to, when you've been out of the ring for a year and a half, and it's a guy that's headlined our Spanish shows, it's a guy that's going to drive subscribers over there as well, and more importantly, it's a guy that's going to give it everything. Like, Sandor Martin's not a guy who's thinking, I'll take a few quid to fight Mikey Garcia and take a knee if it gets tough. This is everything to him. He wants this kind of challenge. He's going to be well out of his depth as well. But let's see, if Mikey has an off night, if he's rusty, Sandor and Sandor produces a great performance, who knows? But listen, on paper you look at it and you say it's a pleasant return for Mikey Garcia, having been out the ring for a very long time.
Mikey said to me yesterday that when the fight was announced, he didn't initially have that buzz about it, he wasn't necessarily up for it. How key is it though that he does make a statement on Saturday because of the fight ahead? That's
the danger. I mean, you heard Sandor Martin. This is the opportunity I've looked for my whole life. I will do everything I can to announce myself to the world on Saturday. And Mikey's going, you know, we'll get this out of the way, then we've got the big fights coming up, etc. That's dangerous. But Mikey's really, really good. Really good. I mean, you talk about 4-division world champion, future Hall of Famer, pound for pound quality fighter. He's just inactive a lot, and that's been one of the downfalls of his career. So he wants to go out, make a statement. You know, look, the fight with Regis Prograis is a great fight. It didn't fit within the calendar for the money those guys wanted, but it can work in 2022, earlier in that year. So I think if he makes that, you know, we can speak to those guys and see if there's an opportunity to make that fight. But honestly, do expect a good fight on Saturday. Like, Sandor Martin's no mug, and I'm not saying, you know, like he's necessarily on the level of Mikey, but if he's not up for this fight, if he's looking past him, if he's rusty, it's going to be interesting, isn't it?
For Mikey, where do you actually see his immediate future beyond this? Do you see him back at 140?
I just think he just wants, you know, he wants to be in big fights. I don't think he's really a 147 pounder. I mean, you saw that against Errol Spence, but Errol Spence is also a big welterweight as well. I think he's 140 pounds. You know, 135 was tough for him, but he's just really, really good. You know, a guy that's got the ability to, you know, win world championships at super feather and at feather before that, lightweight, and then obviously go in and fight Errol Spence and beat Jesse Vargas at 147. He can really fight across the divisions. I just feel that looking at his size, you know, you look at the guys like Montana Love at 140, he looks like a 140 pounder. But for now, you know, he's a catch weight between light welter and welter, as he is on Saturday.
I will speak to you tomorrow about the rest of the undercard, but one fight I want to touch on is Elwin Soto and Jonathan Gonzalez, both of them expecting pretty much a war. Yeah,
Puerto Rico v Mexico. The great thing about the smaller guys, light flyweights, super flyers, always in brilliant fights, and this will be a cracking fight. Soto, all action, great champion. We've got a nice thing going there now in that division, as we have with a lot of the smaller divisions, where we can start making those big unification fights. Kai Gucci against Soto is a brilliant fight, and we'll see that early 2022 if Soto can be victorious on Saturday.
Eddie, the Montana Love signing, talk us about that. It was a good signing.
Massive signing for us, because, you know, I watched Montana Love fight on the Jake Paul card and on Showtime pay-per-view, and I just thought, wow, what a start. I mean, forget the fight with Baranchyk was a war, but this guy just has something about him. You know, he's on the turnbuckle, he's beating his chest. I think he can be a really big name in world boxing. I think he has loads of talent. He will fight on the undercard of Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez. Great platform for him, and I think the kid's got it all. I really do, and he's the kind of signing we need to make in America, because everyone's been after him. We got him, and we can make him a big star on DAZN. And 2022, although he'll fight at the back end of 21, will be a massive year for him. We want to do more in Cleveland, Ohio. Interestingly, when we look at the DAZN subscribers, there's huge amounts of subscriber base in Ohio, and he's obviously a big star now in Cleveland, and that will be a big market for us in 2022.
Eddie, I want to go back to this past weekend. We haven't had a chance to catch up. Fury Wilder 3, a brilliant conclusion to their trilogy. Your initial reaction, first and foremost?
Well, it's one of the first fights I've stayed up till 5 o'clock for a long time, and it got to about 4:40, and I was sitting there in Liverpool just falling asleep. And I'm glad I stayed up, because it was a brilliant fight. You know, I know people expect me to say something negative, and anything that I might say that's even remotely critical will be, but all I can say is great entertainment. Great entertainment, fair play to both. Deontay Wilder, who I wasn't his biggest fan, I didn't like his excuses going into the third fight, but he showed tremendous heart. I mean, the guy he couldn't stand up after 3 rounds. It was unbelievable. Fury's got this brilliant way of getting people to use the nervous energy, because I can't think that Wilder was just in the kind of shape that would see him exhausted after 3 rounds. So it's something that Tyson Fury does to Deontay Wilder that makes him do that. But even when he couldn't stand up, he didn't stop trying. He didn't stop trying to knock him out, and he was running on empty for 6 rounds, and he showed tremendous heart. I think in any different kind of situation he would have been pulled out of the fight, but everything that happened before, fair play to him. Fury, fair play to him, he got up off the deck. One of the difficult things is the inactivity, to come back after, a year and a half for both guys. So brilliant fight for boxing, and everyone wins in that situation. You, Boxing Social, us, DAZN, Sky, BT, whoever it is, because people look at that and say, wow, boxing's hot, and it is hot. But there's a lot of people that love to jump on the boxing's dead bandwagon. But when you have events like that, it shows you how great the sport can be.
Has Fury cemented himself as the number one in the division now?
I think it's difficult on paper to say he's not number one in the division right now. I still think that AJ is the best heavyweight in the world. I still think that Dillian Whyte can beat Tyson Fury as well. But if you look at it on paper, yes. The only thing I would say, and again, people can jump on this and call it negative if you want, is he has only beaten one man in the last 2.5 years. And to keep jumping up pound for pound rankings by beating the guy that you'd already just stopped over 6 rounds, that's topical, and that's up for debate. And I feel like to be a generational great, you have to beat the best in the division. And I don't feel like he's done that consistently. But he's done what he's had to do. It was a great performance, it was a great fight. But I think if you want to be critical, he has boxed one guy in the last 3 years. And it's difficult to say, you know, he's one of the greatest of all time when you've got to fight AJ, you've got to fight Usyk, you've got to fight Dillian Whyte, you've got to fight all these guys as well. But taking nothing away from him, brilliant performance, great win, and yeah, on paper it's difficult to argue that right now. Even though I believe AJ wins that fight, like I say, on paper, you know, he's put in another great performance and a great victory.
I just want to touch on White Wilding, because there's a rematch clause. Let's just say if Otto was to win, does that not make things a little bit more messy once again with regards to that WBC mandatory situation?
No, because Dillian Whyte should be mandatory regardless of that fight. I mean, he's waited enough, and there's all kinds of stuff going on legally behind the scenes about that situation. But, you know, Dillian Whyte against Otto Wilding, tough fight, risky fight, but at the same time as well, when Dillian Whyte wins that fight, how can you deny him a shot at Tyson Fury? It's quite ridiculous. We know that contractually Usyk has to fight AJ next. That's not up for debate. People talk about step-asides and all this kind of stuff. AJ is not entertaining that in the slightest right now. And so Fury has to fight. Is mandatory. I saw getting into it with Andre Ward. Yeah. You know, let's just let him wait. You know, undisputed or bust, or sit out and retire. Why? The guy's had 2 fights in 2 years. If you want to wait, that's 3 fights in 3 years. Fury should be active. He likes he likes being active. You've got a world championship. You have to face your mandatories. You've seen AJ do it time and time again with Povetkin, with Pulev, with Usyk. Let's see Tyson Fury take care of one of his mandatories, and that should be Dillian Whyte. And that's a brilliant fight. That's what I was saying to Andre Ward. It's not like it's some bloke you've never heard of. We should be asking for that fight, no? I mean, it does a huge amount of pay-per-view buys, sells out a stadium in the UK, and I believe Dillian Whyte can win that fight. But first things first, Otto Wilding, really tough fight, October 30th.
AJ, has officially exercised his rematch clause. Yeah. Was it a surprise to you that he was so kind of insistent on it immediately after the fight to take that rematch?
No, because any champion would want to get their belts back. We can't take away from the brilliance of Alexander Usyk, but AJ didn't perform well that night, in my opinion, and he's frustrated because he knows he can do so much better. He'll have to do a lot better to beat Alexander Usyk, and Usyk is the favourite going into that fight. But for me, there's so much more AJ can give in that fight. I believe he can win that rematch as well. And it's never up for discussion, Andy. Like, even against Andy Ruiz, for me, it was a bigger risk, or mentally tougher, to take that immediate rematch against Andy Ruiz than it was to fight Usyk. He got outboxed against Usyk, right, by pound for pound number 2. So he's not beating himself up about it. Well, he's actually beating himself up about it, but he wants another crack. He believes he can beat Alexander Usyk, and he wants to try and do it. But he'll have to get it right.
If he was to lose, where does he go there? The same question was put to Deontay Wilder. Yeah. Where does he go on the back of his defeats?
It's really down to the performances. And look at Deontay Wilder. He's had 3 back-to-back defeats, really. I know he drew the first fight, but let's be honest, he lost that fight. He's had 3 defeats, even if you want to call that a draw. He's had a draw and 2 defeats. He's more desirable now than he was before the first fight. It doesn't matter. If you're in great fights and you're entertaining the public, Deontay Wilder has ability, might be the wrong word, but let's call it the ability to beat any heavyweight in the world, right? I think AJ, too good, and knocked him out. He could knock AJ out. Dillian Whyte, I think he's too big for him, and he'll do the same thing that Fury did in terms of leaning on him, drain him out, but he could knock Dillian Whyte out. Usyk, I think Usyk will absolutely school Deontay Wilder, but he could knock him out. So do you want to see Wilder fight again? I'll answer that for you. Yes, please. Put him in with anyone. Great fights. You know, after the Fury fight, Whyte against Wilder, what a fight. Ruiz against Wilder, what a fight. In time, AJ against Wilder, what a fight. Usyk against Wilder, what a fight. He's going to be in great fights because he punches like an ox, and he just doesn't, he's technically not great, and he doesn't have the engine, so he's thrilling to watch all the time. So I think coming off 3 defeats, he's more desirable than ever. Now, to your original question, if AJ loses to Usyk again, devastating. But let's go out there and put it on the line, put it on the shield, and you'll be respected for that. Have a great fight. I believe he can win the fight. But it's not really champions don't think, where do I go from here? It's just, I want my belt back. I've just lost to that guy. I want to fight him again. I know I can do better. That's the mindset. The mindset's not, what if I lose? Where do I go from here? You worry about that later. That's what champions do.
With a rematch, where do you think is most likely for AJ Usyk to?
I'd like to do it in the UK, quite frankly. I thought the event at Spurs was unbelievable. We've had offers from around the world to do that fight. I know Usyk would like to look at Ukraine. We can look at that as well with Alex. I'll meet up with him at the end of the month and we'll start planning a date and a venue.
Just a final thing with AJ, there were some rumours and reports after the fight that he might be splitting with his training team. Do you have any knowledge on it? No,
I think what AJ will want to do is, analyse why he performed like that. Yeah, the tactics weren't right. He underperformed, but why? And again, it's difficult just to say he didn't get the tactics right and he underperformed, because let's talk about the brilliance of Usyk as well. But AJ will always look at his preparation and see how he can improve. And if that's changing things up, looking at bringing people in or whatever he's got to do, he will do that. And right now, all he can think about is how he wins that rematch. So he'll put everything in place to make that happen.
Eddie, fans in the UK received a survey from DAZN a couple of days ago. It's led many to believe that there might be the introduction of a pay-per-view service from DAZN. Can you clear things up for us?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. I mean, in certain unique situations. Very important to get the difference between bringing pay-per-view to a platform and bringing it for specific fights. Absolutely 100%, the aim of DAZN is to bring you traditional pay-per-view nights that we've seen in the last 5 years as part of the monthly subscription. They need to have, in my opinion, a pay-per-view functionality for unique circumstances. That's the key word. Because when you look at it now, Alexander Usyk against Anthony Joshua, that is not going to go as part of your DAZN subscription, being quite frank with you. So you need pay-per-view functionality to be able to do that. They have pumped pay-per-view functionality within their platform. White Warling, Chisora Parker, these fights that you used to see on Sky pay-per-view are 100% not part of that vision. That vision is about providing value for money to subscribers in different ways. But I believe that yes, at some point, and maybe those fights don't land on DAZN, so it won't exist, but they need to have pay-per-view functionality for unique events like Fury against Joshua, Fury against White, Wilder against, Usyk against Joshua, because that model will not work to attract those mega fights. So they want to be in a position to at least be in the game when you talk about those once in a year or twice a year experiences. But that doesn't change the plan of taking the events where you, not you necessarily, but probably you, would moan about being part of the pay-per-view model, and stop making them pay-per-view and put them as part of the DAZN schedule.
Eddie, but do you understand the backlash to it? Because people have dug up you in the past saying pay-per-view will not work in the future. Video from Joe Markovsky interview saying there was no plan for it.
If you look at my comments, which is pay-per-view will never be dead, it will just exist for unique circumstances, like Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua will always be on pay-per-view. Tyson Fury will always be on pay-per-view. So nothing's changed in terms of the fights that we're going to be putting on the DAZN platform and the model that surrounds that. And I don't even know, by the way, this is just a research. I mean, I think it was not the greatest move by the research department, but it was just to find out people's opinions about pay-per-view. I think they've got the answer, by the way. But absolutely, right now, is there going to be a pay-per-view event in DAZN in 2022? I really don't know. Quite possibly, if that fight exists. But it has to be fights that are outside. The whole point of this move is to take boxing on pay-per-view nights where we used to receive so much criticism and put them at a more affordable price for the customer and to deliver more value to that customer. Great example, Dillian Whyte against Otto Wallin. That is a standard £20 pay-per-view on Sky Sports every day of the week. Now it's part of your £7.99 subscription, where you would have got Anthony Fowler against Liam Smith, Mikey Garcia here in Fresno, and Dillian Whyte for £7.99 a month. The value is unprecedented, and that's what we will continue to deliver. There may be occasions as one-off events that are too big to sit within the platform where DAZN need to be a player with that functionality, and DAZN can be a player to bring one-off fights in that model. So honestly, nothing changes at all. But I think that it was a research operation where I think they've got their answer.
That's my final question on it then, Eddie. Because of the backlash, do you think DAZN will look at it and think and decide against introducing it? Or if not, is it as early as maybe AJ Usyk too? If they were to win the rights, that's the first fight, which is a pay-per-view.
If they're going to get fights like AJ Usyk and White against Fury, they will have to have pay-per-view functionality on their platform, quite frankly. So if you see those fights on DAZN, and again, this is a question for DAZN, I would expect to see them in that model, but not the fights that you consistently see on Sky pay-per-view. Give you an example on what Sky playing at the moment. Chris Eubank against Liam Williams is a £20 pay-per-view that will be coming to you soon on Sky. All right? That is a pay-per-view that is a DAZN Saturday night fight night all day long. We're taking off the fights from pay-per-view that you consistently moaned around and delivering them with a much more cost-effective value for money option. And that is what we will continue to do.
Eddie Galahad-Martinez was announced today. Again, a strong reaction to that negative...
Strong reaction because it came after the DAZN email. So I look at it and say, look, Kid Galahad needs to take a voluntary defence in Sheffield. Okay, Kid Galahad, big star on our Spanish platform as well. Good fight with Zelfa Barrett. Some people thought he won that fight with Zelfa Barrett. We went through all the Brits. None of the Brits would fight Kid Galahad. Some were injured, some weren't ready, some didn't fancy it. It's a solid voluntary defence. Terry Harper against Baumgardner, brilliant fight as well. Chris Billam-Smith defending his European title. So the timing wasn't great on that because you could have put out Fury AJ. People still would have moaned at that point, but it is what it is, and it's a great card for Sheffield to bring back Kid Galahad.
Just a couple of updates before I let you go, Eddie. Devin Haney, what's the latest?
Devin Haney will fight. You got basically, this is end of the year is going to be electric on DAZN. You've got the three, I won't say kings yet because there's got to be princes till they fight each other. But Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez against Kambosos. You will see them back-to-back in weeks. We'll announce Devin Haney's opponent next week. Obviously, Ryan Garcia is going to be fighting Jojo Diaz, Teofimo against Kambosos. But you'll see those three fights land on DAZN globally, back-to-back, to close the year. And
final one, Canelo Plant. Disappointing to see that one land with BT?
No, I mean, the DAZN weren't in the marketplace for that. Obviously, they have a position where they have global rights on all shows. They didn't have that fight in the US, so it wasn't really an option for them to make a really aggressive play on that. You know, BT doing a great job at the moment, and I think pay-per-view is, again, you know, that's in my opinion not at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That's another debate for you guys to have. But seeing him tomorrow in great condition and ready to fight, it's going to be a great fight.
Eddie, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.